All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome back. Torah on tap. Okay, this is the last class in Kibbutz Avim, but certainly not a subject that we have conquered. It's a subject that I hope that I opened your eyes a little bit to the complexities and the seriousness of this particular mitzvah. I want to start where we ended, and it's really an extension of a question someone asked last week about reverence. She's like, did you really talk about reverence? I want to explain that. I want to just double down on that a little bit. There is a pasuk in the Sefer Shemot. It says, "Et avi v'ima kaved et avecha v'et imecha." Right? It's a very explicit verse in the Ten Commandments to honor your father and your mother. There's another time in Varim, where we go through the mitzvot again, and over there it says, "Et imo v'et imo v'aviv tira'u." Okay, two psukim, two different mitzvot. One is an aseh and one is a lo taseh. One is a positive commandment of honoring, and the other is don't do the don'ts, the reverence part. Okay, we spoke about both of them in the halacha, like what that means in terms of reverence, in terms of standing up for your parents, not speaking their name. We spoke about the idea of your responsibility to provide for your parents and so on and so forth as part of honoring your parents. Different ways of how we approach the halakha. If you look back at the classes before and you think about it in these two terms, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But I want to do something different tonight. What's interesting is that, and I'm going to use this as a way of explaining the idea of reverence and honoring together. The mitzvah of honoring your parents is one of the few times, and we mentioned this before, where the Torah gives an explicit reward for the actual mitzvah. Okay, it says that if you honor your parents, what's the reward? No, babysitting, guys. Okay, fine. No, the real reward is the real reward for honoring your parents is arichet yamim. And the question is why? Out of all the things, why not parnasah? Why not, a good shidduch? Why not something else? Why is it specifically arichet yamim? Now, be mindful that whenever the Gemara speaks about the rewards in Torah, it reminds us that all the rewards in the Torah are not to be taken literal in the physical world. That all the rewards in Torah are talking about things that are happening on a spiritual plane. Why? Because there is no way to measure a spiritual action and then somehow take that spiritual action and configure it to or equate it to something material like life. Okay? And I was thinking a lot about this on my way in today, and the Pasha this week is Pashat Chukat, okay? And we know that the idea of a chok is simple. There's no real understanding of the mitzvah itself. Paraduma. How does an animal, a red heifer, that is its ashes are taken by a kohen who is pure, sprinkled on someone who is impure, and that person becomes pure, and now the sprinkler himself, who is no longer pure. How does that even work? What does it mean for the body to be impure? The body was totally fine when the guy's alive, the guy is dead, and now the body's impure. What does that even mean? So I like to try to understand these things in the most simplest possible terms. And we always have to go back to this one fundamental idea that you are a hybrid, okay? That you are half human and half soul. Okay, or you could say half body and half soul, probably more accurate, because the idea of being a human means being a body and a soul. Okay? So what is the nature of the body and what is the nature of the soul? This idea is not my own, it's based on the Kedushat Levi on this week's Parsha. And he says as follows. He says that a body follows the laws of physics. It's very simple. You give it food, it gets nutrients, you give it sunlight, it takes the vitamins, it does exactly what it's meant to do. It's very clear. Okay? It follows the rules of nature. Whereas the soul is outside of nature and therefore it does its own thing. Now, when you do a mitzvah, is that natural or unnatural?
Both.
Okay, what do you mean?
Some are natural, some are not natural.
Okay, give me an example of something that's natural.
That's a good question.
Honoring your parents. Okay, so now what's interesting is that you could make the argument that the reason why the few times where you see in the Gemara and the Torah itself, We learn about people that had extraordinary kibbud av v'em skills. They are typically non-Jews. It's interesting. Esav is known for his, his amazing honoring of the father and the mother skills. And then the Gemara, that's the stories we talk about, the different goyim who were, used as examples of why not the Jews? And I think the reason why the Gemara and the Torah is doing that is because there is this idea that on a very base level, one should just naturally understand kibbud av v'em. But to what degree? That's a whole other question. So
Something natural might be saving somebody's life.
Yeah, do not natural. It's a natural.
I'd be inclined.
okay, so you could say that, you could make those arguments. I'm going to argue that the natural state that we're all born in is one of selfishness, and therefore whatever decision naturally makes the most sense for me is the right one. I think that's the natural state we're all born in. I don't think we're born with a moral compass. I think morality is something that is taught. It is something that is learned. It is not something that is intrinsic to society, because you see how many societies have very different ideas of what morality looks like. Different places. There is or was an African tribe where they had the concept of possession did not exist. There was no stealing.
You're not born with an innate instinct to kill people.
I didn't say that. What I said was your natural instinct is to be self-serving, and therefore, if you are in a situation where killing someone is self-serving without morality, that's exactly what you would do.
Yeah, that's not contrary to saying that doing a mitzvah is natural in some respect.
The Kedushat Levi would disagree. The Kedushat Levi says that the nature of the body is that it does not want to do anything that is spiritual. And if you're going to say that honoring your parents is not spiritual, you have a problem, because it's in the Torah, it's a commandment, and therefore it becomes the spiritual mitzvah. And the reward for that is arichat yamim, not in olam hazeh, but in olam haba, in a whole other spiritual plane. Okay? So he says like this. He says that the nature of the body is such that it does not want to do anything spiritual. Its natural desire is to be involved in anything that is physical. When you spend time developing and sensitizing yourselves physically via spirituality, having the soul push you to do more, that is when you get the body to get the positive results of that spiritual act. But the body on its own is not interested in anything spiritual, which is why he says that when the soul and the body are no longer united, its default state is impurity. The purity itself comes from the kisei hakavod, from the soul's connection to the heavenly throne, and the body is nothing but something that has value, but will be discarded because it is something that is material, and all material things are an amalgamation of all things that are impure. Your actions, your choices is what elevates the soul, what elevates the body to become more spiritual. Which is why, by the way, they say, and I've never seen this before, but I've heard from others, that when someone lives a spiritual life, right, their body does not decompose, whatever that means exactly. You've heard stories of how they had to move rabbis who were buried for hundreds of years, and when they exhumed their bodies, their cheeks were still rosy and wet from the mikveh that they were put into, like after they, what does that mean exactly? I don't really know, but that's what I'm told. How we understand that, I don't know. Spiritually speaking, is it possible? All things are possible. Okay? I wouldn't rest my faith in Judaism on that alone. Okay? But I would say that there's this idea that when a person lives a life of spirituality, his or her body is able to elevate itself out of a world of decay into something more. I have a friend actually who owns a whole bunch of cemeteries in and around New York. There's only 5 Jewish cemeteries in New York. He owns 4 of them. It's a business everyone's not to get into. Anyway, and so it's just a really bad joke. Anyway, okay, fine, sorry. I'm just testing the waters. So he was telling me he actually owns one of the cemeteries where Harry Houdini is buried, and every year on September 15th they come to his caver. All these magicians, they do all these magic tricks. So if you ever want to see a free magic show, September 15th, I'll send you the cemetery. Just go there, you'll just watch it. Anyway, so he was telling me, because he's part of the Chevra Kedisha, that it takes longer for a body to decompose today, more so than it did 15, 20 years ago. And he said the reason why they believe that this is the case is because of all the preservatives in our food. And the preservatives in your food that you're consuming actually is also preserving you. So it's not inconceivable that the tzaddikim who are lives a diet of soul preservation somehow preserves their bodies. I don't know, I'm just making that up. But anyway, the idea is that it is possible for the body to extend its natural decomposition and so on and so forth. This is probably why the Egyptians were so involved in finding material ways to extend the body. You see this in ancient cultures where they went out of their way to go ahead and try to figure out a way of cheating death by embalming a body. And you have people that are buried 3,000, 4,000 years ago, and you still see their hair and their skin and so on and so forth. I'm not sure if any of you have been to the catacombs in Rome, but like in Vatican City. But if you ever go to the Vatican, which I have, and you go to the catacombs there, you can see every single pope is buried there in a glass coffin. And you can see them. And they're all embalmed. So you manage to look what they look. There's one guy, I forget his name, no one really liked him. He was like the worst pope, and they messed up his embalming job on purpose. He looks like the Wicked Witch of the West. It's all green and like decomposing, and he's in that. It was really gross. Anyway, so kibbud av v'em. Let's go back for a second. Okay, so you have this idea of kibbud av v'em. Okay, is it a mitzvah that you and I can say we understand the time, we understand the reason for it, or is it a chok? Where would you put the mitzvah of honoring your parents? Now, you could say that it's a mitzvah, and therefore you could say there's a tam for the mitzvah. It makes sense. You got to honor, this way you honor your parents, you honor God. Okay, and what I want to walk away with tonight, with your permission, is this idea that really we don't understand the reason why we do kibbud av v'em. We could come up with all kinds of interesting reasons. It's called a tam, it's a taste, but it does not give you the full expression of what the actual mitzvah is. Well, if I was to ask you, how would you explain kibbud av v'em? What is it? Some of you have been here for a few weeks already. How would you explain to someone who's learning for the first time this idea of honoring your parents? What is it? Go ahead, I'm asking you.
It's like showing them respect.
Showing them R-E-S-P-C-T?
For like the fact they were here.
Okay, showing them respect for life.
Karsatov.
Karatitov. Awesome.
It's the only one that straddles both.
Okay, it's true.
Because it's beyond the
Right, got it. We spoke about that. The idea is on the fifth between the two, what's it called? Two different tablets, got it. Well, what happens to a parent that's absenteed? They're not there. Is there a Karsatov still? What happens to a parent that just gave up the kid for adoption and they found them 20 years later? Is that still respect there? Is that still, like, where do we draw the line? Or we don't draw the line. It's just we all understand. It's what you got to do. Parent's parent. Right? Halacha is pushing you beyond what you and I would expect is reasonable for the simple tam explanation for the mitzvah itself. Yeah.
How do you define a parent in this case? Like, is it someone who just biologically gave birth to you?
We spoke about that also. Yes. So yeah, even an adopted parent has a law of honoring and revering. But if you had there are certain things that biological parents have that may even be beyond an adoptive parent. But certainly an adoptive parent has a status of honor and reverence. Yeah.
I would assume your argument you could say about most mitzvahs though, right?
Oh, I totally can.
Okay, it's not, I'm saying it's not.
Yeah, no, but I'm double clicking on this one because we've spoken about it, and I think that I wanna kind of like remove the notion that it's a common sense thing. And this one's the most common sense because like we've been ingrained to our society. Like, of course you honor your parents. What kind of animal doesn't honor their parents? Even animals honor their parents, right? So the question is, well, to what degree? And the reason why I'm asking the question is because I'm assuming if you're here, it's because you have parents, whether they're alive or not. And then the question is, well, to what degree are you going to honor and revere them? Well, that degree depends on what you think is natural, my obligation, versus, well, Rabbi, that's just, come on, you're going too far with that. Like, that's just made up. Well, I'm going to say that the whole entire thing is, who says that any of it makes any sense? I don't think any of it makes sense. There's a famous story of Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. He was sitting on an airplane, and he was flying to, Israel, I guess, and he had a scientist sitting next to him, and they started talking. And it's a famous story, and he's like, talking about, whatever it is, his beliefs, he's evolutionary, and every few hours he'd have his grandchildren coming to check up on him. And this atheist says to Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetz, he's like, I don't understand. He's like, my grandchildren don't come and check on me as often as, well, what did you do? How did you do that with your kids? So listen to his answer. You know what he said? He said, the difference between me and you is that in my world, in your world, in my world, my grandchildren see me as a link that's closer to Mount Sinai and to a transmission and to a tradition. And therefore they come to me and they want that connection to me because I want that connection to something beyond me and themselves, God. He's like, but your beliefs and your grandchildren, you believe that you believe in evolution, which means that you are closer to being a chimpanzee. And they are more evolved than you are. So according to your own logic, right, they have no reason to really respect you because they're a higher evolutionary, they're a higher level of evolutionary, development than you are. Right? So from a complete, non-spiritual place, you can make that argument that a child is a greater version of the parents. And if anything, maybe the parents should honor the children. By the way, one of the simanim that you're in the times of Mashiach is explicitly in the Gemara. Is that what? Chutzpah is one of them, but more than that, it says that when the elderly will stand up for the young, and there will be a whole complete confusion of what honor looks like. Complete confusion of what it means to respect and honor parents. Well, it's so obvious, and why is that one of the simanim? It's a breakdown in society. And we're watching it happen. I believe we're watching it happen right now. Watching it already. We're seeing how children are no longer fully appreciate, respect, honor them. Think about the honor and respect your parents gave to your grandparents, and if not that, think about your grandparents to their parents. It's a different level, different world. You ask stories, you hear about things they did and how they did it. It's a whole different reality. But the one thing I want to be clear is that, number one, is that the idea of honoring parents is beyond our full comprehension. That's what I'm saying. It's true for every mitzvah, but specifically this mitzvah because it's so close to home. It's much easier for me to worry about the laws of kashrut and Shabbat because it's not my parents. Shabbat and kashrut don't have a sound. They don't call my name. They don't say, hey, where were you? And that just triggers me to all kinds of things later. It's a whole different kind of animal, right? So the idea of the arichet yamim, on a simple level, you could say arichet yamim is because, like you said, it's hakar tov, like, you're taking care of them, the Hashem will take care of you. You could say that, it's mida keneged mida. Your job is to be to emulate God. You're here to emulate God, and the more you emulate God, to be emulating God means taking care of people. So when God takes care of people, you take care of people. And the most natural person for you to take care of first would be the people closest to you. Who's close to you? Your parents. And therefore, that would be the first person you have to go and take care of, and that's you emulating God. And therefore, if you're going to emulate God, God says, I'm going to give you the special blessing of special time that's awarded to you. Now it's interesting, it says, the Pasuk says, Zot Chukat HaTorah. Right? What does the word Zot mean? Well, what's the proper way of writing that Pasuk?
What's saying it?
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah. Zet. What's Zet? What's the difference between Zet and Zot? Why is it a female? Why is it gotta be all feminine all the time? Why can't it say Zeh? It should be masculine. Zot Chukat HaTorah. Yeah, it's a whole big thing also. But the idea of Zot is this reminder of something about femininity. What is the nature of femininity versus masculinity? What?
Receiving.
Okay, so
You live longer.
that's what they say. If you are someone that is interested in understanding this topic, there's lots of interesting books written on it. Femininity is the power to receive. Masculinity is the power to provide, to give. So what is the connection between Zot, Chukat Torah, and femininity? Now we understand the proximity. The mitzvah itself is taught right after the chet of Korach, Korach and his community. What was Korach's big gripe with Moses?
He wasn't
monopolizing the whole Kuhuna.
Oh, so number one is that it's about Kuhuna Levi, which is interesting. That's not what he said. He said that Kulam Kedoshim. He says we're all holy, right? And then
That's the accusation. Meaning, that's the accusation he has against Moshe, but that he's trying to defend himself.
Whenever you see someone making an argument about equality, that's their way of usurping power. Just be mindful of that. It's just fascinating, like deep insight into the Torah itself. Oh, we're all equal. I know what that is. That's you trying to take power away. I've seen that before. That's not how that works. And then he's making the argument about the Kuhuna. Well, make up your mind. Is it about the Kuhuna, or is it about everyone being equal? If everyone's being equal, then why would you want there to be a Kuhuna? The Kuhuna, by definition, means not everyone is equal. So that's a guise of saying, I want power. I'm trying to usurp your power. I'm trying to say something to break your... And Moses, he sees right through it. He doesn't even talk about everyone's... He goes straight for the Kuhuna part. Let's bring the Torah, let's figure it out, let's answer it. But his big argument in getting the people to follow him was two things. One, tchelet, and the second, mezuzah. What was arguments, just for a quick review? Mezuzah, I understand. You say, you're going to put the mezuzah on the doorpost, okay? And it protects you. The word mezuzot comes from the word zaz mavet, moving death away. Okay, interesting fact. Anyway, so he says that if I have a whole entire room filled with Sifrei Torah, why do I need a mezuzah in it? He says, yeah, you still need a mezuzah. He's like, see, nonsense. This is horrible logic. And then after that, he says what? He says, you know what? What about techelet? Okay, you have to have one string of techelet in your tzitzit. Okay, what if the whole entire beged is made of techelet? Does it still need a boost? Yes. Nonsense. Bad logic. Bad logic means you have poor logic, Moses, poor logic skills, and therefore I can't take anything you have said to us literally. Now what's interesting is that both of those mitzvot are really about what? The tchelet is about remembering there's God above, and mezuzah is what? Remember God in your home. Right? What is it about? It's about the commandment itself. Is it better to be commanded to do something, or better not to be commanded to do it on your own? Trick question. My mom always says, why do I always got to ask you to do this such times, and my response is, what do you mean? We know in the Gemara it says that it's greater to be commanded than not to be commanded. So I'm waiting for the command so I get more schar, because when you say it, I don't want to do it. And when I do it, I get more mitzvah. All right? So the idea is like this. Whenever anyone asks you to do anything, the nature of a human being is to want to do the opposite. I don't want to do it. You say, no, that's just I want to do me. You don't tell me to do you. I do me, you do you. Okay, me, you. It's all okay. You do you, I do me, and we're all okay. Don't worry about it. Okay? Well, where does humility come from? Right? Where does that ability to kind of like surrender parts of ourselves to something greater come from? That's a choice we have to make. And it's not an easy choice to make. Because the nature of a human being at our core is, again, selfish. How do I know this? I've had 6 children of my own. And Baruch Hashem, thank God, I watched them grow out of selfish beings to becoming selfless beings. Okay, the nature, we are all born with one trait, and that is, give me. It's just, and then as we become adults, it just becomes a more sophisticated way of taking, and we rationalize it with all kinds of thinking and behavior. Oh, I gave to that guy, and therefore, but we are here for one reason and one reason alone. You and I are all here to do the same thing. We're here to give. We're here to become selfless givers. We take care of ourselves. We provide as much as we can to the people around us. We do all the things that we got to do. But at the end of the day, you and I are here for one thing alone, that is to give. That's what I'm here for. Me giving is the greatest expression of being godly. Is God masculine or feminine?
Neither.
What? God is always in the masculine phase. We have words that describe God in a feminine way, but at the core, that's correct, but at the core, God is always masculine. Why? Because He's always giving. You and I cannot be here without His giving. And I mean, the world that exists itself is an expression of His masculine. Now, there are feminine traits that allow us to have rachamim and so on and so forth. That's great. but at the core, it is masculine. Now, is it better to be a giver or a receiver? It's a trick question. We spoke about this before.
Whatever your purpose needs.
What? You need both. I didn't ask you both. I asked you which one. Is it better to be a giver or a receiver? Who here wants to be a receiver? You want to be a receiver? You're a liar. You're a bad liar too. Yeah? Well, why? Who here wants to be a giver? Everyone wants to be a giver. I don't want to rely on someone else. I don't want to receive. But the reality is that a receiver is greater than the giver. Why? Because the receiver transforms the giver into the giver. What does that mean? Does that mean that God is limited? No. God creates the tapestry. He paints the canvas. He creates the canvas, and you and I are operating on the canvas. The canvas is the ultimate expression of giving. We can't do that. But when you are in a state of receiving, sometimes we be vulnerable and allow ourselves to receive. We don't want to receive. We want to take from you. I don't want to owe that guy a favor. I don't want to do anything for that person. We create a space where we can receive so that we can make that person to a giver. And hopefully you're the kind of person that create that space so you can give back and not just be in a constant state of taking. The ideal is never to be in a state of taking. It's always to be in a state of giving. Who gives to you more than anyone else in the world besides Hashem? Parents. Right? Now, we have to create a space where we can take from our parents also. I don't want anything from you, Ma. No, thank you. You know how many times my mom invites me for dinner? Come on, let's go out for dinner. I'm like, Ma, we eat every single time I see you. You're making me food. Why does she want to do that? She wants to give. That's her way of, showing me love. And sometimes, as a child, we need to create a space for our parents that allows them to love us in their unique way, not just in our way. It's very easy to say, no, you love me the way I want you to be. I want to be loved. My terms. But there's also this idea that if we have the humility to think about our parents as people, not just parents, then we hopefully ask that question, well, how do my parents want to love me? Am I creating a space for them to love me the way they want to love me, the way they know how to love me? Or is it just always about me and the way I want to be loved? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so easy to say, well, yeah, I get it. I'm going to give them honoring the parents. I stand up, I sit down, I keep quiet, I pay for the bill, I'll take out the garbage, I'll mow the lawn, I'll do my stuff, and we're good. High five, we're all good. I did the honor part, you received it, we're all good. No, it's beyond that. The idea that there's honor and reverence together, if you think you understand it, you're making a mistake. You have to be thinking beyond. The nature of spirituality is that it is not rational. Spirituality at its core means above and beyond teva, above and beyond nature. I would say there are elements of kibbutz M that would fall into the more material parts of our being. Of course, I want to be the guy that honors a parent, because what kind of an a-hole would I be if excuse my French, if I would not be and I would be disrespecting them, right? I don't want that reputation. But that's, again, selfish, narcissistic thinking. Whenever it's coming from a physical place, a more material place, it's always coming from, well, how is it serving me? That's the nature of all things that we are. I think about, how does this serve me? Okay? The idea of spirituality is for you to open yourself up to another possibility. Right? I want to do this not because it's serving me. I'm doing this because it's above and beyond even me. I want to go outside of me. I want to become something more than just me taking and just receiving. How do I flip it around and become someone that is the receiver so that I can give? That's the highest expression of giving. How can I, as a child, be someone who is taking from my parents in order for me to give back to them? That's the one and I think that's where the secret of Arichet Yamim comes from. Because just giving can also be narcissistic. I feel great. I just made $1 million here. I just gave $100,000 to charity. Amazing. Yeah?
It's not the only thing. There's Shluch HaKhan says Arichet Yamim too.
So we spoke about that. We said that the difference between Shluch HaKhan, Arichet Yamim, and the Kibbutz M is that none of it makes sense. Those are the two places in Torah where we speak about Erichet Yamim, long life. They have mitzvah of sending the mother bird away and taking the eggs and honoring the parents. And the Chachamim point out that we use one and the other to remind you that none of it makes any sense. God bless you. See, it's true. That's why she did it.
We're doing it because Hashem said we should do it.
That's the only reason why we do it.
Right? Every mitzvah we should do the same.
I know, but you see something as simple like Yud Avim, you say, like, well, it's basic. Even the Goy knows how to do it. Even the Goy knows how to do it, and he does a better job. And the reason why he's doing a better job is because he's not commanded to do it in the same way. Once you're commanded to do it, it becomes challenging, yeah.
You spoke about Esther and you spoke about example. Is there an example of someone in Tanakh that's like a good child? Not because he's evil everywhere else or because they don't have parents?
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvaro. You really learn about the first place if you want to go into like the Tanakh and find about like a father-son in a relationship, father-mother, son-mother, son-father relationship. You learn it from who? Abraham. Close, right? Abraham. Abraham's father's name was who? Terach. Very good. And what was his mother's name? Amtalia, very good. And right, the mother. And so you have these two parents who raised them, Mesopotamia. They were an aristocratic family. Terach was very good friends with whom? Who's the king? Nimrod, very good. And Nimrod was, you guys know your history really well. And Nimrod was issued a decree that every single male child should be thrown into the fire, right, not the river. Okay, and Amtalia was pregnant, and she says to her husband, Terach, I'm sorry, I'm not going to give my child. I'm not going to do it. Okay, she goes off into the desert and gives birth alone. She raises him separately from society, comes back later. Okay, the first thing Avram does is he's brought into the family business. Okay, and he's like, this business is dumb. Hey, Dad, I'm gonna create a little war of I'm gonna do a little bit of Mesopotamian idol, and we're gonna break all the idols. Okay, and his dad comes home, we know the story, and he's like, what's going on? The big one did it all, how can you believe in this stuff? This is garbage. And he questions society, and his father has his son arrested. Calls Nimrod, says, listen, my son, he should have been killed many years ago. He's got to go to Molech. Send him to the fire god. And that's where he's thrown into the Kibshin Esh and he's tested. Okay? He survives. And eventually we know Terach does Teshuvah. And they somehow mend their relationship. But it came from Abraham being completely focused, steadfast on his belief. Unwavering. Now he had parents, he had a lot of Karta Tov, but he also had a very clear, systematic belief in spirituality. And that spiritual belief got him to a place where it changed the whole entire planet. I really believe that the true unsung hero in that whole story is the mother, Amtali. She raised Sarai Menu. She was, Amtala means a logical argument in Aramaic. So she was probably brilliant. She was given that name, super smart, very sophisticated, stood up to her husband. You see femininity over there kind of like taking a whole new level. And giving birth to this man, Abraham, whose whole midah is what? Chesed. What kind of chesed was it? Chesed of just giving for the sake of giving, I want nothing in return. To a fault, by the way. To a fault because you have Ishmael. Yitzchak takes the other extreme to a fault. Yaakov, the balance. Okay? They're all amazing stories. Moshe, right? Moshe, right? He's adopted, okay, by Batya, okay? And he's raised by her. He's raised in the house of Paro. He shows him tremendous amount of kavod, okay? But he finds out his real parents. He gives them kavod also, right? And he was someone that had a difficult nature. He was definitely spoiled as an Egyptian, what's it called, prince. But somehow found that ability of moving beyond himself and hearing about the plight of his brothers that are being punished, that are going through all pain in Egypt. And he pulls himself out of it. You and I are living at a very interesting time, at crossroads in history. It's 2024, okay? This last year makes absolutely no sense. There are people today in the world that are celebrating terrorist organizations, celebrating the torture, rape, kidnapping of human beings, supporting that openly, right? We live in a time where gender roles are confused, okay? Where people have no concept, no normal logic anymore. Like logic has gone out the door. We have a president in the country today, the United States of America, who for sure has some kind of Parkinson's disease or some kind of other mental disorder, and like his wife and children want to keep him in power because they're afraid of the loss of power. This is 2024. You think that we've moved beyond these things, but every single actor on every single stage is only thinking about one thing. And by the way, Trump's no better. It's all selfishness. Everyone who's playing the game right now is selfishly thinking about themselves. All of them. And that is a recipe for disaster. Yeah.
It's true, but you also have to be selfish. And immediately, this whole world was for me. This is a healthy.
Yeah, if Ein Anili Mili doesn't end like that, how does it end?
I understand.
It says Ukushani Atzmi Mani. So like you're saying I agree with you. That of course there has to be a balance. I think the point that I'm making, is I'm not talking about the extremes. Obviously the extremes are bad. That's why we're mentioning it here. Right? We want to talk about that balance. There has to be a way where we can start doing things for not just our own selfish wants. The point that I'm making is here. This is what I want to end. And I'm just in a lot of pain. I got like a really bad mosquito bite that got infected, and I got a little bit of a cellulitis going, and like I can't walk properly. I shouldn't have driven here tonight, but I came because I hate canceling my class because I know Jessica gets really mad at me when I do. And anyway, I just joking around. It's not about Jessica. I just wanted your attention. Anyway, I say it like this. We're ending Kibbutz Av V'En. Okay, we had this conversation this is the 6th week we're having this conversation. I don't know on my end, I can't measure what it's done for you. I don't want to spend my time talking and sharing ideas if it doesn't lead to some kind of action on the ground, some kind of real change with the self. And I just want to go through this. Like number one is this idea of going through the halachot isn't an intellectual exercise in understanding Jewish law, right? Don't make it something cerebral. The purpose of this conversation was to motivate you to take that relationship super seriously, because it is a prime keystone relationship that impacts every other relationship. And if you still have a high school grade level of thinking when it comes to honoring your parents, you're missing out on everything this world has to offer. You're missing out on the opportunity of you elevating yourselves as individuals. And for me, more importantly, you're missing out on the opportunity of bringing that special light of honoring our parents into the world. I really believe that's what's missing today. That it's that kind of selflessness in us being able to give and provide to our parents in that way that we're able to kind of change the world around us. It starts with us as individuals. Can I tell you that it'll change the whole entire world tomorrow? I don't know. The only thing I know is the only thing that I can control is me. I can only control my response to the situation that I'm in. I can't control anything. I can't control you. I can't control anything else. I can't control my wife. I can't even control my kids. The only thing I can possibly do is control my own response to the situation that I'm in. You're unhappy? That's your choice. You're choosing to be unhappy. You want to have a relationship that's meaningful? That's on you. It's not on them. Stop passing that responsibility on and start taking that responsibility for yourselves. The more ownership you take for the situation that you find yourselves in, the more empowered you become, and the more you and I make this world a better place. Because the only thing I can control is my response. How do I elevate my response? That's the whole purpose of these classes. The reason why you and I are having these classes about Kibbutz Av V'En is because I wanted you to elevate how you and I think about giving kavod to a parent, mother, father, and so on and so forth. But that's on you, not on me. There's the sheets are all there. If you go to the YouTube page, every class, my sheets are there to take the sheets and read it. It's all yours. Go for it. There are books that are written on this. There's I mentioned Ray Wallerstein's book honor them, revere them. It's a lesson every single day. It's not for 365 days of the year. It's like half the year. 6 months of lessons for Kibbutz Adam. Do that. Do something. But if you're not upgrading, you're not taking response, stop thinking about it in terms of rational thing. Oh, I do it. No. What the Torah wants from us, as far as Kibbutz Adam, is to go above and beyond the natural way of honoring our parents. That's where the gravy is. That's where the secret sauce is. That's where the Arichat Yamim comes from, not the lazy stuff that, not saying you guys, because you're already ninja masters in the subject, but everybody else that you know that is dealing with this particular issue of honoring the parents, it's just like high school level honoring parents. It's a chok. We don't understand it. We don't understand any of it. Okay, but there's something about this particular mitzvah that elevates us to heights and spheres that are unimaginable. It is the thing, the single one thing that bridges these two worlds of humanity and godliness. Maybe if we do this mitzvah, I'm just trying to think, I'm just grabbing at straws. The world is so broken and crazy. This is the one little thing that becomes a turning point for everybody. Maybe that if we started a campaign of just honoring parents again, and just going back to old school values in this country that it has at some point, it lost its way. Maybe that's the way you and I can make this world a better, greater place. Anyway, I want to leave you with a bracha. Give you a bracha that you should have the 100% crystal clarity and understanding your unique way of honoring your parents. I give you the bracha that you understand that through that action of honoring your parents, you were able to bring the Orosh Mashiach into this world, and most importantly, it should be a schut for all the things that you need in your lives. Have an amazing week. Bezrat Hashem. We'll continue next week.